All right, this is our second God Thoughts conversation. I'm here with Pete Osborne. Pete, thanks for making yourself available, man.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, totally.
So our last conversation with Terry, we just took some time to talk about, who she was and how her life has been modified, adapted in this whole weird time. So, what's your life like, man? What was it like pre-virus, and what's it like now?
Yeah, so pre-virus, I'm a developer, more of a manager now, but a web developer and architect. And so I worked in an office on a computer all day long. I'd started a new job in November, and the team that I'm leading is split between India and Rhode Island. So spent a lot of time at weird hours. And then I have two kids that have probably terrorized everyone at some point at church. And they would go to school, and then, we managed that. We had a woman who watched them some days. My mom watched them other days. Some days I worked from home. We just managed, them after school. And then my wife's a physical therapist, so she worked, pretty much every day doing that. She also is a caretaker for her mom, and so she's there twice a week. So yeah, before that, my average day, I got up and went to the gym and then went to work and then came home at varying times and hung out with family. And then it was basically on mental life support the rest of the evening. So now the biggest shift is, I don't go to the office, which for me and what I do, fortunately, that has actually been a benefit. And to the point of I may stop going to the office now because, again, most of the people I work with are not in this time zone. And so there isn't really a reason to be at a brick and mortar place. I'll go in when needed, but other than that, so for that, on that end, it's been fine. The difference is when I worked from home in the past, I could fix that meeting, and I can't do that now. And also, since my kids aren't in school, I have to kind of be a full-time parent. And since they're still supposed to be in school, a real solid effort at being an educator, which I'm not doing well. So that's kind of difficult. And having, two kids, I think a lot of people who have kids and multiple kids know it's like they get sick of each other. And so when they're forced to be on their own for a while, it used to be, lots of little skirmishes and stuff like that, which is fine. But, when I have to also work during the day, that's a little more difficult. Unfortunately, my wife still has to go to work. So she is working at a clinic all day. And then she also still helps her mom. So we're kind of in this weird spot where she has a lot of things she has to do that add some stress and in a new way, and she's seeing people all the time, and it's counterintuitive to what we're supposed to be doing right now. And then I'm home trying to work and teach and be a dad. So that's been a lot different. I think, on a positive side, obviously I'm paying like things that I've been wanting to get done or get done. But on the negative side, my brain is just full all day, all the time. And so it is a little exhausting.
Yeah, that's a lot. And sadly, we had a little bit of internet sort of glitching going on, but I definitely could tell what you were saying. And the shift you're talking about, kind of shifting to being the stay-at-home dad. How has that sort of you already talked about being on mental life support at home in the evenings.
Yeah.
Is that different now? Is that exacerbated?
A little bit. When my first daughter was born, I got laid off, and I had to watch her the first year of her life. Not had to, I got to. That was actually amazing, except for the slowly running out of money. And that was fine because that was all I did, and I took care of the house, and I just kind of took care of home. But when you have to work too, I find I have to compartmentalize everything. And so while I don't necessarily feel, I actually feel a little bit less on my mental life support in the evenings, but I also feel very much like a robot, like I'm just kind of task oriented. Do laundry, do dishes, prepare dinner, do your job, make sure the house is clean, make sure the kids aren't murdering each other. And so you have this kind of constant on state. And so then when I'm done in the evening, it just, there's like a void and you just go ahead. And so it's a different kind of mentality to manage it this way than it was before.
Yeah. I as I've been talking to people, I think there's a common theme that there's sort of this difficult to describe feeling of things have changed and we're all making do with the best we can, and yet we're kind of in a sense grieving the loss of various things. So tell me this, man, nothing without any judgment whatsoever, what is something that you are grieving the loss of right now that you don't get to be a part of? And please don't be spiritual with this.
Okay, I won't. I should trust you. Actually, and Ryan and I talked about this yesterday. I'm an extrovert, and I don't get to interact with anyone in a meaningful way. I take a weird amount of joy, like going to the grocery store because I'm out and I see people. And I've never had an issue working from home, but there was always that escape where I could go to the gym, or I could go to lunch, or I could go to coffee, or those types of things. And so it's a weird kind of loneliness that I didn't really anticipate. And so I'm really grieving the loss of my ability to just associate with people. And it doesn't take much. My average day, I didn't get out, a ton. I wasn't just like hanging out at the mall, people watching all day. But, something as simple as going to a friend's house to record a song for an hour once a month, just stuff like that. It's gone. And that makes me sad. And I think the other thing that's kind of tied to this is when I was in college, I was an athlete. And so during the season, I was always way better at school because I had to fit everything into a schedule. And it was, so I had to kind of pay attention. And I see a lot of people talk about all these things they're going to get done while in quarantine. And I'm like, I don't feel like I get all that much done. This is a lie. That wall has been that way for a couple of days. Like, I'm not like blowing through these tasks because it's just, there's no end to the time at home in sight. And so I don't feel any urgency to do things. I'm just doing them because I need time to do them. And so even, playing music, which is my favorite thing, I haven't played as much as I thought I would because there isn't an urgency to it because I just feel like I'm always going to be here. So I don't know if that makes sense, but.
No, it totally does. I was thinking about you with music. You do a lot of music, and music is a collaborative thing, whether you're
Yeah,
in the studio or playing live, and that's a big deal to let go of.
it is. And it's hard I love it and I love playing, but my family can only hear me practice so much before they excommunicate me to, the neighbor's house. There isn't like, and I don't always need a goal, but when you're devoid of a goal, whether it's to put a song together with people or learn something with people or play a show or, finish this thing or that thing, like it gets really difficult to sit down and put the joyous effort into creating art. So for me, that's been a weird struggle.
Yeah. So let's take it a little notch deeper here. What's the inner conversation with God looking like these days as you're kind of wrestling with this stuff? Have any thoughts that just seem to be persisting, or things that you feel like you're just becoming aware of that are becoming focuses for what this season might be for you?
Yeah, I think I always think of the the story of like the two women that are sisters, and one is cooking in the kitchen and is super mad at her sister for just hanging out with Jesus. And then her sister is hanging out with Jesus, doesn't understand why her other sister's like, hey, why are you working so hard on this stuff? Like, Jesus is here, let's hang out with him. And I've always felt like the one that was hanging out with Jesus. And now I feel like the one that's doing all these things. And so my realization is that my time with Jesus feels like I'll get to that when I have a moment. I have all these things that have to get done, and so I'll take care of that later. And so I think for me, the hardest thing is to actively engage in faith of any kind when I'm doing the things I feel like I have to do. And so as we kind of chatted about a little earlier, I've always loved going to church. I know not everyone does, and that's kind of a thing for me. And it isn't necessarily because I've always had these amazing churches to go to, but it's that I'm at the mercy of church at those times. And someone I talked to a long time ago talked about the difference between, back in Jesus' days when they would read scripture, because not everyone had a Bible. And so you would go to these gatherings, whether it was at the synagogue or just at a rabbi's house or something like that, and people would read the Bible to you, the scribes would read the Bible to you, and you were at their mercy. You couldn't read ahead. You couldn't glance around or go back to it later. You had to hear what they were saying at that moment, or else you had no way of getting it again, your average person. And I feel like for me, that's been my feeling of church my whole life, is like, I am here. There's nothing else going on. I'm not working. I'm not playing. I'm not doing other stuff. I'm just here. I'm at the mercy of this message. I'm at the mercy of the word that's being spoken. I'm at a time where I have nothing to do but be with God. And that isn't all I need, but what that does is that infuses me with this feeling of God that throughout the rest of the week comes up in my head, because I was I don't want to say forced, but I was dictated a message, and I have to consume and deal with that message throughout the week. And when I take that away, even something, and I shouldn't say this since we're doing this very thing, I can turn off a stream. I can pause it and walk away. At church, I could just go to the bathroom and hide, but you're just kind of there. And when I remove that from my life, that's, I think, the biggest spiritual thing I've noticed is I just I'm not very good at forcing myself or taking the initiative to reach out to God when I don't have this kind of weekly anchor.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that as we're going to have a break from being together as a community for a while. I know I get into my rhythms of just kind of being there weekly, and you can almost forget what that's doing at times, right? Like I feel like it's easy I've gone to church my whole life, always kind of been involved in various ways. And it's weird taking a break from that and experiencing what that feels like. I wonder how many of us will recognize certain things, kind of like what you're saying, where we didn't realize how much the immediacy of this personal interaction and the message that you can't really run away from because you're in the room, that kind of thing. Which sounds to me, is that like what you're describing?
Yeah, very much so. And I think too, like, if you work somewhere and you have your work friends, right? And that community, you share this experience at this job. And if you switch jobs, a lot of times you lose those friends because they were a very important part of this thing you were a part of that you shared. And to me, I think that's that part of church too, like that you're kind of in this situation where you are engaged because that's the goal of this place. But then you're also in this community of people that are your church people, and they bring out this thing in you. They complete this feeling you get every week. And they may not be people you see the rest of the week. You know, like there's always this feel that all your friends have to be your friends all the time. Why? Yeah, that'd be exhausting. I've got friends from 20 years ago I don't ever see that I played football with. You know, like if I had to be their friend as actively as I am the friend of the person next to me, that'd be awesome. But this really cool community you're around once a week allows you to kind of complete that feeling, you know, complete that feeling of belonging and of receiving this message and of this, I don't know, I can't really think of the words to describe it, but they're kind of one and the same. Like I like to receive a message that I have to hear with the people that have chosen to be a part of that message with me. And that's something that definitely is difficult for me to be separate from.
Yeah. Do you have, I don't know if this is thoughts for the larger community or just your own personal thoughts, kind of as we're all kind of finding our way and how to do this in the absence of physical contact, and what
Yeah.
happens when we're actually like in the same physical space. Um, what are your thoughts about, you know, what's the next best thing? Like, how do we not go 6 or 7 weeks just kind of completely isolated, which, you know, if it's easy to do in regular life, it's going to be even easier to do now, right? I mean,
Yeah.
uh, I feel like I'm aware of that. It takes, you know, that extra measure. Do you have any thoughts for yourself or encouragements for other people for what that might look like in this time, knowing full well that, you know, we're just getting started, so everybody's figuring this out together.
Yeah, you know, I think, I would like to say that I thought of this myself, but it's something that the company I work for has been kind of reminding us regularly is when you're home alone and you're you know work from home or just at home alone, it's really easy to just go from thing to thing to thing to thing. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have any distractions from doing anything. You can go from like uh, working on a meeting, then go to the next meeting, then go to the next meeting, then go to the next meeting, or it could be doing laundry and then dishes and then cleaning the floor and then taking your kids over to like read a book, whatever it is. That efficiency you have also just destroys you. It's so hard on your brain and your mind. Those short distances, that drive to work, that trip to lunch, that drive to pick kids up, all these little breaks you get organically through your day because it's not all right around you, those are vital to your brain, allowing you to process things, allowing you to kind of deal with this kind of stuff. And so to me, I think the best thing you could do is to have some sort of schedule or reminder to just pause, you know, in terms of, you know, like a spiritual practice, just as an example, maybe your pause is you just stop, you know, on Sunday or whatever day you decide, and you listen to the latest sermon. Now, I'm not trying to plug the sermons necessarily, although that seems appropriate. But what I'm saying is like live like a 1920s family that had to wait for a radio show to come on and listen to the Phantom as a family in a room. You know, like have that be your pause. Just say, you know what, at 5 p.m. today, we're just going to listen to this. And it's a half hour or 40 minutes, depending on who's speaking. And we're just going to stop everything and just, uh, you know, be at the mercy of this message. And it's amazing the difference that makes when everything else kind of passes away, and then you get back into doing your things. But when you have no organic breaks or rests presented around you, you either can end up doing nothing, or you can end up just burning yourself out every day, never taking breaks on your schedule.
Yeah, our rhythms, everybody's rhythms in many ways have been upended. And so it's easy to kind of just feel like you're floating from thing to thing, like you described. And I love the thought that you could find, I mean, we're all trying to find our new rhythms right now. You're trying to find them at home with kids and work, and with Mariah working. I'm trying to find them too. But noting that there are important rhythms to be had, and part of that rhythm is pause, is giving margins for rest and for headspace and for, I mean, I've talked with friends about windshield time. Like sometimes you get in the car And for guys, at least for me, like just the chance to like shut off my brain, it's like, oh man, I need that so much. I think, getting outside, simple things, go on a little walk around the block or around the house, or for you, the airport.
Yeah.
uh, um, those little things become really critical for kind of keeping healthy rhythms and sanity for us, for sure. And they also become moments where I would hope that the Holy Spirit can kind of just creep back into our thought process and begin to kind of whisper and bring things to the surface that would otherwise probably just get stuffed down beneath.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and I think you have to treat those as important, those pauses, as vital. Like it gets real easy to just skip them, to like say, busy with this thing, I'm not going to go on my walk or whatever it is. And you have to really treat them as important, and you don't necessarily have external factors forcing you to do them. And so you have to kind of, that's like the discipline. And I mean, anyone who's watched me eat knows I'm not disciplined, but that's the discipline you have to kind of, build into your life is these are important, even though they may seem like I'm doing nothing. Like there's huge things happening in those moments.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really good, man. I have tried over the last years to incorporate the beauty of using, this little device to stay in touch in simple little ways. And I do think one of those ways is to ask for help, for little reminders, little encouragements, little like, hey, don't forget to pause today. Hey, did you remember to get outside and breathe some fresh air? Like, hey, I'm
Yeah.
thinking about you. I'm praying for you. As much as I hate the fact that we're forced to digitally communicate, I'll take it over nothing. Like
Right.
the having this versus having nothing. I'll take this for sure.
Oh yeah. It's interesting too, like with the technology we have, your circle can widen. Like we had a Zoom meeting with my cousin down in San Francisco, and her kids, and we don't see them. And we're busy. They're super busy. So there isn't really a good time to do that any other time. And so, what better use of a pandemic than to reach out to people you haven't seen in a long time, virtually, not physically. And, like maybe see relationships you haven't seen in a while that, this is probably as good as it's going to get anyway in terms of your ability to relate and communicate.
I think that's probably a great takeaway for this conversation, which is like, yes, everything's crazy, but the silver lining is we have some new opportunities, and it's very, very possible. It seems like that God may be directing our thoughts, directing our gaze in directions that we're often maybe too busy or just too in a routine to sort of remember or think about. And now we have this opportunity. As crazy as
And
it all is, it is an opportunity, isn't it?
it is. And I mean, I don't know that there's too many times that don't have struggle. This seems to be kind of everyone's struggle. I mean, I think the enormity of it is, but at the same time, like there's always things, even in times of struggle or pain, that I think are important for you to recognize that there are things that can happen in those moments that do actually improve your life or can move you forward, and it may not be something you recognize right away or for a long time, but you know.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I would be remiss, Pete, if we finished this conversation without me giving you an opportunity to tell a funny story of something that has happened recently. And this is like the worst thing to do to somebody, to put them on a spot. But I just feel like with everything that has happened over these last weeks, I can't imagine, because you have more funny stories than any person I've ever met ever. And it always seems like there's no end to them. Like they just keep coming, and all of them are funnier, and most of them are stranger than anything I've ever experienced. So I'm totally putting you on the spot, but if you have something that you would like to share with all of us just to help us get a window into the life of Pete Osborne, I would love it, man.
Well, so Tim shares a lot of my stories, unfortunately, but or fortunately, I guess. Um, me think here. So I don't know what, does it have to be from since the quarantine?
No, it does
Could it
not.
be, okay, so I was driving to work one day, and I got stuck in traffic, and this is when we lived in Washington, and I'll keep this brief. But I was stuck on the 405 at like 5 in the morning. It was still dark because Washington's perpetually dark. And usually you get stuck in traffic for, you know, any number of normal reasons, but it started to smell super bad. And I thought maybe it was something like in the car. And so I rolled down the window and realized that was a mistake, and it was definitely outside. So I rolled the window back up, and like everyone around me was driving like this, like your shirt's like a good filter. And I was like, what is this smell? You know, so, and we're stuck in traffic, so there's nowhere you can go. So for, I mean, probably about 20 minutes, I'm stuck just smelling it. I mean, it was bad. And I get up to where the stop kind of happened, and the cop had pulled someone over, and because we all have to look, it slowed traffic down. But when it slowed the traffic down, one of the vehicles within the slowdown was a honey bucket truck that had a giant hole in the tank. It was just spilling out on the road. So that's what we were smelling. And so when the honey bucket truck got close to the cop, obviously he noticed, and he made the truck pull over. And so I got through this, and I drove to work, and I worked at an energy drink company, a small tiny office that we shared with a print company. And when I parked my car and I got out, there was like literally like stalactites of honey bucket residue hanging down from the bottom of the car, and the whole block smelled. And so everyone that came through the door was like, what is that terrible smell? So I had to tell this story about 13 or 14 times. And the last person I told it to was laughing. And he was like, well, what are you doing for lunch today? And I said, well, I'm going to go take my car to get it washed. It's probably the main thing. And he's afraid that let's go lunch. And I was like, that's weird. Okay. And so we go out. I was like, well, I want to take your car. And I was like, why do you want to take my car? And he said, well, it'll be funny. And so we get in my car, which he called the poop ship, and drove to Wendy's, and we parked right by the drive-thru. And then we just sat in there and watched people come around the corner and roll down their window to get their food, and then pull their hands in and roll it up and just keep going. And about 5 or 6 people just left without picking up their food before we decided that was me. So there's my story. That was the first one I could think of.
I have never experienced or known anyone else to experience literal like poop hanging off of the bottom of their car.
Well, the weird thing too is it was in Redmond, Washington. The only car wash in this town was like one of those manual ones where people like come out and wash it. And I'm like, I think I tipped them like $40. Like, I'm sorry that you had to deal with this.
Oh my gosh. Well,
So,
if that doesn't make people appreciate the fact that they don't have to drive to work right now, I don't know what.
There you go. The hazards of commute. I mean, commuting is a never-ending well of stories for me. If you want to know about getting trapped in a tunnel or hitting random people, or that's been I got stuck on a bus next to someone who beat their pants for 6 hours, like that. Like those are, commuting is something that I'm not missing at this moment. So.
Well, man, thanks for letting me put you on the spot. Thanks, especially also just for sharing your life with us and encouraging folks. I hope people can take some encouragement in their conversation with God, and also in how we can find ways to reach out and support each other in this time. So thanks a lot, Pete.
Yeah, you bet. No, thank you. And hopefully you don't regret the last part.
See ya.
See ya.